Hello and welcome back to Senior to Scratch. This is my 25th episode talking about the 25 Masters. I'm Paul, and today we're going to focus on two ageless wonders at this year's Masters, Bernhard and Fred Couples, who both nearly made the cut at Augusta National, outplaying major champions half their age. You've all heard about Rory McIlroy's playoff victory over Justin Rose, so I'm not going to elaborate on that other than, wow, what a thrilling ride that was, and congratulations to Rory. But this episode is different. We're shining the spotlight on Longer, age 67, and Couples, age 65. Two legends who finished ahead of long-hitting major champions like Adam Scott, Brooks Koepka, Cam Smith, Keegan Bradley, Sergio Garcia, and of course Phil Mickelson. These two missed the cut by just 1 and 2 shots respectively. You might be asking, well, how do these two seasoned veterans hang with the big hitters on a course that stretches over 7,500 yards? And more importantly, what lessons can we as older golfers pull from their performance? Well, I dove deep into the numbers using the Masters app and datagolf.com's deep analytics, and I'm about to unpack some of the key insights. Stick with me because I'll show you how to turn those stats into something you can use to improve your own games. So let's start with Augusta's par 5s, because that's where I feel their weekend hopes slipped away. Over the first 2 rounds, both men were 2 over par on the 4 par 5s. These are incredibly close margins, but I think small mistakes on those holes made all of the difference. Now, if we start with Bernhard, on Friday, Bernie went 1 under par on Amen Corner, which is incredible, to sit at even par through 14 holes. He was riding high until the 15th. He placed his first 2 shots in really decent position and had a wedge shot that unfortunately spun back into Rays Creek, and he paid the price with a double bogey. That shot really was the line between playing the weekend and heading home. And you could really feel how his emotions must have been flooding at that time. He didn't know whether this would be his final competitive round at Augusta, or if he'd still have 2 more chances at it. Now let's talk about Fred Couples. Fred had 3 real birdie chances on the par 5s in round 2. On the second hole, he pitched from 43 yards to 7 feet and just missed his birdie putt. At the 8th hole, he had a 48-yard pitch remaining and left an 8-foot look short. On 13, he hit a really accurate 49-yard wedge and set up an 11-foot birdie that hit the hole and missed. And then on 15, he had a wayward drive, forced him to scramble a bit, and he couldn't go up and down for par. So this +1 performance on the par 5s could have easily been -1 and weekend play, in my opinion. Next, let's talk about off-the-tee play. Specifically, let's talk about distance first. Now, as I mentioned before, Augusta stretches around 7,500 yards, and length matters. Now let's look at the tee shots. Longer averaged just 255 yards off the tee, nearly 40 yards shy of the field's 293-yard average, meaning he was effectively facing an extra 4 clubs or more into every green. Remarkably, that distance would only place him in the 0 to 5 handicap bracket if we were looking at club golfers, but his accuracy is far superior to the 5 handicaps. He hit 93% of fairways, versus a 0 to 5 handicap is roughly 50%, 50 to 55%. Couples was a little bit more up and down. He averaged 275 yards one day and 216 the next. I'm assuming that's because he was trading drivers for other clubs to basically get more accuracy, and he was very accurate in the 80 to 90% range fairways hit. So bottom line, both of them were sacrificing about a stroke off the tee compared to the rest of the field. And they also showed us that accuracy can compensate for distance, but only up to a point. So Augusta's length showed up in their greens and regulation numbers. Both Longer and Couples hit just 42% of greens in regulation over 2 rounds. Just to put that into perspective for us club golfers, Arccos data tells us a typical 5 handicapper averages about 44% greens in regulation, so 42% is more like a 5 to 6 handicap. However, the data golf analytics reveal that Longer only lost about a stroke to the field on approach shots. This is impressive, given he's often hitting long irons or fairway woods into those tough greens. And Couples was only a quarter stroke worse than average. Now, because they were missing over half the greens, and the field missed only around 38% of the greens, both of them had tons of chip and putt saves. Yet amazingly, neither incurred a single 3-putt. Strokes gained putting obviously adjusts for this statistical bias of their lower putt totals because they missed more greens. But even that said, Longer actually picked up about a stroke and a half on the greens and a half a stroke around the greens, so he gained nearly 2 strokes in his short game compared to the field. Couples wasn't quite as strong, but still gained about a third of a stroke with his wedges and putter. Now those numbers underline exactly where they made up the ground and where they came up just short of making the cut. Their wedge touch and dialed-in putting almost erased their tee to green deficits due to the course length. So what do these numbers really mean for us senior golfers trying to get better or even chasing scratch? Well, now I'm going to get into my game specifically, and some of these comparisons are quite striking. On the tee shots, Longer averaged 255 yards off the tee, as I stated. Now I've tracked roughly 400 of my own drives, factoring in wind and elevation. That should all normalize. I sit at roughly 265 yards. Yet, on the Decade app, I'm losing 1.6 strokes off the tee compared to Longer's 1-stroke deficit. So in other words, he's finding more playable positions more often. Now I'm working on strength and tempo this offseason to help close the gap. But really, all that said, I'm still comfortable being just half a stroke behind one of the greatest golfers on a Champions Tour. Now the approach play is a different story. Bernhard only lost 1.1 strokes to the field on approach shots, while I gave up 3.7 strokes last year. To improve, I've switched into the new PXG Players irons, the 0317 tees. They're less springy, have a more steep descent angle, and hopefully I can boost my distance control confidence this coming season. I'm also going to more strictly adopt Decade's target selection methodology, and will spend more time gapping my clubs, tracking dispersion, and hopefully zero in on some more consistency. Now in the short game, I lost just under a stroke around the greens, whereas Longer actually gained over half a stroke. Over the winter, I've experimented with new chipping trajectories and trying to make sure that that's more consistent. And this season, my plan is focused on more regimented drills. Things like landing chips to exact yardages on the practice green, for example, 3, 5, 7, 9 yards. Trying to understand the spin and rollout and the lie impact. This is the area of the game where strength is not an advantage, and most don't practice this enough. On the putting side, Longer picked up an amazing 1.3 strokes on the greens at Augusta, while I'm giving away 2.6 strokes to the PGA average, nearly 4 strokes swing. My 3-putts rates have been brutal, 31%, 3-putts from 30 plus feet, 15% from 20 to 30 feet. Neither Longer nor Couples 3-putted once in 4 rounds. I've just put a new lab putter into play and feel more confident rolling the rock in my bonus room. Speed control drills are next for me. I'm ditching the never up, never in mantra. My long putt misses go past the hole way too often based on my Decade distribution graphs. This creates those tough 5 and 6 foot comebackers that are all too often missed. I'll also try to hone in my aim point express feel to dial in some better lines, take out that trusty level, and just do some work on the putting greens. That's the only way to get better, right? That's about it for today's deep dive into those Legends Masters data and how we can learn from these ageless wonders. It's almost time for our course to open, and I'm super excited about chasing that little white ball around again. In the meantime, hit me up on Instagram at Senior to Scratch, or drop a comment on YouTube with your questions and stats, and maybe I can help out or you can give me some insight. Once again, thanks for listening to Senior to Scratch.